By the time Gregg Allman walked into Fame Studios for the last time, he already knew he was dying. The cancer had come back in 2012, and doctors had given him 18 months to live. He stretched those 18 months into 5 full years, never telling the public a single word. But that terminal diagnosis was not the heaviest secret he had ever carried. The real one had been with him since he was a teenager, rooted in pain so deep it took a lifetime of music to work through. Gregory Lenore Allman was born on December 8, 1947, in Nashville, Tennessee. Before he turned 2 years old, his father was gone. On December 26, 1949, Willis Turner Allman was murdered during a robbery after picking up a hitchhiker named Michael Robert Green. The killing happened over just $15. Green shot him and was later sentenced to life in prison. In a single night, Gregg's mother, Geraldine, was left alone, broke, and tried to hold a family together from scratch. Survival became the center of everything. Geraldine worked one accounting job after another, determined to keep her sons, Gregg and his older brother Dwayne, out of orphanages. The family left Nashville under pressure and moved to Daytona Beach, Florida in 1950. Money was always tight. As a child, Gregg did not always see his mother's sacrifice clearly. For a long time, he felt abandoned. He even believed she hated him, and that feeling stayed with him until he was much older. Things got harder when Geraldine sent the boys to Castle Heights Military Academy in Lebanon, Tennessee around 1953. Gregg, still very young, and Dwayne were pushed into a world of uniforms, drills, punishments, and strict rules that crushed the spirit right out of them. Dwayne fought back in his own way and often protected Gregg from hazing. But Gregg folded inward. He became depressed, struggled badly in school, and was even beaten by instructors after poor grades, including a math score of 40% in 1956. There was no joy in that place. Only pressure, shame, and discipline from morning to night. Their mother could barely afford the $50 a month to keep them there, and after 2 years, she finally pulled them out. That chapter hardened Gregg, but it also pushed him closer to the music that would become his escape. Back in Daytona, the struggle never really let up, but now Gregg had something to reach for. By 1952, he already had a paper route, delivering 200 newspapers a day for $1.50 a week. Then came the moment that changed everything. In the summer of 1957, after saving $39, he bought a used Sears Silvertone guitar from a pawn shop, a red Sunburst model that quickly became the center of the brothers' world. Dwayne grabbed it first, and from there the fights began. They argued over it constantly, traded it back and forth during practice, and kept going no matter what. One fight in 1958 even snapped the strings, so they rest-strung guitar with fishing line. That one instrument became their whole universe. Dwayne worked on leads. Gregg learned chords and rhythm. By 1959, they were already out on the streets trying to earn quarters with it. At the same time, another world was opening up for Gregg through a small transistor radio. Starting around age 9 in 1956, he would twist the dial to WLAC in Nashville, a 50,000-watt station that blasted rhythm and blues all the way down to Daytona Beach. He listened from midnight to 3 in the morning under blankets, trying not to get caught, while DJs like John Richborg and Bill Haas Allen played Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Howlin' Wolf, Jimmy Reed, and Bobby Blue Bland. These records did not just entertain him. They rewired him. He filled notebooks with song titles, tracked more than 100 songs, and by 1962 had taught himself around 50 of them. He later called it a shift in his DNA, and that does not feel like an exaggeration. Then came Floyd Miles, and with him the music turned from fascination into something deeply personal. Around 1958, when Gregg was about 11, he met Floyd, a teenage bluesman from Daytona, who led a band called the House Rockers at the Sugar Bowl Club. Floyd did more than play music. He showed Gregg how to feel it. He gave free lessons in backyards, telling him not to sing from the chest, but from the gut. He showed him how to use a diaphragm, how to hold a note, how to make word sound lived in. By 1961, Floyd was jamming with Gregg and Dwayne, teaching them stage presence, movement, and nerve. Years later, Gregg said Floyd gave him his howl. By the time Gregg and Dwayne reached Seabreeze High School in Daytona Beach around 1963, Music was no longer a dream on the side. They formed the Shufflers and started playing raw rhythm and blues in local clubs. Gregg was only 16, but he already had a voice that made people stop and stare. They played Otis Redding and James Brown songs, earned $25 a night split four ways, and kept going. By late 1963, they had played more than 50 local shows. Crowds grew, their names spread, and for the first time, all that childhood pain had somewhere to go. That local buzz turned into a full grind across the South. By mid-1964, they were using names like the Escorts, and by 1965, they had become the Allman Joys. The name kept changing, but the obsession stayed the same. They played more than 200 shows a year in bars, armories, clubs, and dives across Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. Every dollar went back into the mission. They bought records instead of food, spent money on gear instead of rent. They rode around in a worn-out car with 300,000 miles on it, carrying set lists of around 150 songs memorized from 45s. In 1966, after one Chattanooga gig, they were so broke they hitchhiked 400 miles home and lived on stolen peaches. Gregg proved how serious he was in the spring of 1965 when he skipped his own graduation for a $75 gig at the Camelot Club in Macon, Georgia. His classmates marched on June 4th while he was on the road, choosing the stage over ceremony without blinking. And in one of the most shocking moments of his life, also in 1965, with the Vietnam draft hanging over him, Gregg did something reckless and desperate. On Dwayne's suggestion, he studied a chart of the foot, picked a spot between two bones, drank whiskey, and shot himself in the foot with a revolver. He showed up at the induction center on crutches and was ruled out for service. It was painful and self-destructive, but it showed just how far he was willing to go to stay on the path he had chosen. In early 1967, it looked like the break they had been chasing was finally here. On March 15th, they signed with Liberty Records as Hourglass in a 3-album deal worth $25,000. In reality, it was a trap. The label pushed them toward polished pop instead of the blues they loved, forced soft material on them, and tried to rein in Dwayne's guitar solos. The album sold poorly. The sessions became miserable, and by August 1968, Dwayne had fled back south and Hourglass had fallen apart. Yet even that failure opened a door to something far greater. In late 1969, Gregg and Dwayne gathered the players who would become the Allman Brothers Band in Macon, Georgia. The lineup included white musicians like Dickie Betts, Barry Oakley, and Butch Trucks alongside black drummer Jai Yohani Johansson, an integrated band in a region still heavily shaped by segregation. They rehearsed for hours every day, often from morning until midnight. They lived packed together in a single house, cooking on hot plates, surviving on cigarettes and coffee. The bond came from that grind. Nothing was handed to them. In the middle of it all, Gregg found his voice as a writer. He wrote Whipping Post, a long, dark piece full of pain and betrayal. He wrote Midnight Rider, a lean, restless outlaw song. Those songs came from real places, from a murder that had shattered his family, from the loneliness of childhood, from years of drifting and surviving. Their debut album appeared in November 1969, and by mid-1971, they were at full power. Recorded over 2 nights at the Fillmore East in New York City and released on July 6, the live album rose to number 13 on Billboard, went gold by October, and earned its place as one of the greatest live recordings ever made. Suddenly, they were one of the greatest live acts in America. Then tragedy returned. On October 29, 1971, Dwayne Allman died in a motorcycle crash in Macon, Georgia. He was 24. He swerved to avoid a truck, was thrown from his bike, and died that same evening after emergency surgery. For Gregg, this was not just losing a bandmate. It was losing his brother, his oldest partner, and the person tied to almost every important memory in his life. Just over a year later, bassist Barry Oakley died in another motorcycle crash, only a few blocks from where Dwayne had been killed. He was also 24. The grief turned heavy and toxic. By 1977, Gregg owed $1.5 million in back taxes. By 1985, he was drinking a fifth of vodka a day and spending around $500 a week on cocaine. He went through rehab 5 times. He overdosed on the streets of Macon in 1984. He was arrested for DUI in 1987 with a blood alcohol level of 0.20. By 1989, friends said he had dropped 40 pounds and was down to 120, looking almost like death. What makes his story so hard to look away from is that he did not clean up in one smooth, heroic moment. It came slowly, painfully, and after public humiliation. When the Allman Brothers were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in January 1995, he got up there drunk, slurred his speech on live television, and had to watch it back. That moment cut deeper than anything else. In May 1995, he quit alcohol cold turkey. The withdrawal was so severe that he needed 2 nurses working 24-hour shifts because of seizures. In July 1996, he quit all substances for good. A liver transplant at the Mayo Clinic in June 2010 gave him more time, though it came at tremendous cost. His body kept sending reminders. Part of his right lung had to be surgically removed, and further health crises wiped out dozens of tour dates in the years that followed. In 2012, just 2 years after the transplant, doctors found that his liver cancer had returned. They gave him 12 to 18 months to live. He kept it almost entirely private. No public farewell, no long explanation, just silence, work, and the stage. He stretched those 18 months into 5 more years, playing more than 100 shows after the diagnosis. In late 2016, weak and fighting through it all, he returned to Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, the very place where Dwayne had once camped in the parking lot begging for a session chance back in 1968. He had wanted to return there for 15 years, telling his manager it would bring him full circle. There, he recorded his final album, Southern Blood. His voice was rough, but he sang with the force of someone who knew exactly what kind of record he was making. One song in particular, My Only True Friend, carried a feeling of farewell so openly that it is hard to hear without feeling the ending approach. He co-wrote it with Warren Haynes, and it sounds like a man looking at the line between this life and whatever comes next. Gregg approved the final mixes on May 26, 2017. He died the very next day, May 27th, at age 69, at his home near Savannah, Georgia, surrounded by family. That timing turned Southern Blood into something even heavier than a final project. It became a goodbye, one he had been quietly preparing his whole life to give.